So here's the thing, guys, that I want you to understand about your music. When I was first making the Scary Monsters and Nice Sprites Skrillex remix, I really felt odd about the vocal chops that I used. Um, Simply because they weren't, I didn't know how or where Skrillex got, it's probably his own voice, but where he got those vocal chops in Scary Monsters and Nice Sprites. So I was super concerned about trying to replicate those, and I thought that that was the biggest deal in the world. 6 months later, it's one of my top songs. No one has ever mentioned the vocal chops. No one has mentioned the sounds that I used, the anything. They haven't talked about those at all. So my point of saying this is, in the beginning, things that seem like a big deal, that hang you up while staring at your screen and looking at your DAW, they hang you up for 15 minutes to maybe even 15 hours. Be careful with that, because you might really be wasting your time on something that the public really does not care about. And I know that I've said that before in other ways, but it's just important to really reiterate that, because people love that song. The vocal chops that I used do the job that I needed them to do, which was basically get somewhat in the ballpark of familiarity of what Skrillex did. That's what they needed to do, and that's what they did, and no one's ever mentioned them. No one's ever, I assume that people like them because no one's ever said that they suck. But there's a few things coupled with that, though. I also, it's one of those weird times I never really understood what people meant by just like luck, or like I just nailed that song, or like that was just everything fell into place. I never liked when people gave me that answer, but that's sort of really what happened with the Skrillex thing. The wall of sawtooth, really trancy kind of sounds in the drop, the chords. I was just messing around and kind of heard that in my mind. Didn't really know how to create it because I really had never made future bass before. Did my best. Maybe sat with those chords for like an hour, and what I mean by that is had the idea, figured out the chords, found a sound. I knew I wanted something trancy, big, sawtoothy, and then basically put LFO on them, and then automated that, wrote it in so that it would, wobble when I needed it to, and would just be a wall of sound with no LFO when I needed it to. It just kind of fell into place. But so my point of bringing that up is the vocal chops are one small part of an entire song that just works together. So it's not like the song is crap, but the vocal chops are really good. It's kind of like the vocal chops do their job, they're good. The lead really gets people, the steel drums, and then the chords also really get people because they're not expecting that for a Skrillex remix. But yet it's not so far away from Skrillex that it's totally off the wall. So what I mean by that is it's at least future bass, and future bass is at least related to dubstep. It's not like I took Skrillex and made it into a jazzy deep house tune, So just think about those things. I wouldn't overthink on it, but, just basically get in the ballpark with everything and don't over-obsess. Really don't even obsess over stuff like the vocal chops, or anything for that matter, because what's that old saying of like the whole is greater than its parts, meaning like everything put together is why that song works. It's not because the vocal chops are authentic to the original. It's not because the vocal chops are really even anything all that special. It's not that lead is all that special. It's a steel drum. And it's really not that the chords are all that special. They're sawtooth waves. Sawtooths have been used in dance music probably since the beginning of synthesis, or as soon as, the sawtooth wave, I guess, was invented. So, it's kind of understanding that all the parts together are what makes it work, not obsessing over like, well, I need the right snare. A character sound like the future bassy break that I use in my Avicii Levels remix, that kind of snare, that very like pop kind of snare, that's a character sound. Character sounds need to be nailed. The sum doesn't need to be nailed. You don't need the perfect sawtooth wave. You don't need the perfect vocal chops. You don't need the perfect steel drum playing. You just need to get the averaged out sound of that in the ballpark of it, and the mind will fill in the rest with the filter of the mind. That's why when you go back and you listen to like older albums that used to sound so magical to you, you realize like, wow, this album was really actually pretty muddy. But at the time it was everything, and really it's still everything now. I'll forgive that it's muddy because it's 10 years old, or like whatever the deal is. So our minds really, really do a lot of forgiving, filling in, and filtering, especially when we are not comparing it to other tracks, which 99% of the time we're not comparing it to other tracks. You're not comparing it to other tracks in the car because you can't A-B it. Now you can listen to that track, then skip to another track, but even in the time that it takes you to skip to another track, your mind, your ears adjust. So I'm talking about instant A-Bing in your DAW, like back and forth, to really critically compare the differences. There's so much forgiveness when you don't do that in your daily life, like at the gym or in the car or whatever. You'd be surprised. So don't overthink it, guys.